Hey there, I'm Evan Deal with the Lead Icon Team in eXp Realty, and welcome to Living in Indianapolis, Indiana, where we give you the lowdown on living in the 317 and the surrounding area. So today we are going to talk about the pros and the cons of living in Indianapolis, and there are both. Though I will say the pros vastly outweigh the cons because this is an awesome place to live, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. But I want to give you both sides of the story so you can make an informed decision when you're looking to potentially move here or move around within the city. So let's dive into it. Now, before we get started, I want to remind you to hit that subscribe button and smash that bell so you are kept up to date and in the know on everything that's happening in the Indianapolis area. We cover everything here from housing to businesses to events, and we want to make sure that you are kept in the loop on everything happening here in Indianapolis. Pro number one is all the sporting events that happen here. Sports are a major part of living in Indianapolis. We've got everything from pro sports teams like the Colts in the NFL, the Pacers in the NBA, the Fever in the WNBA, to AAA baseball like the Indianapolis Indians, and even pro hockey at a lower level with the Indy Fuel. Not only that, we have tons of college teams that are either in the city or within an hour or so outside. We have Butler, Indiana, Purdue, even ISU down in Terre Haute. We're really well covered from a sports standpoint. Not only that, we host all sorts of sporting events. We've had the Super Bowl. We have the Final Four all the time here, both men's and women's. We have the Indianapolis 500, the greatest spectacle in racing every year with the most massive crowds you can imagine. We have the Brickyard 400. We're getting WrestleMania and SummerSlam here. The NCAA is actually headquartered in Indianapolis. So we have so many sports. The NFL Combine every year. And not only sports, but we have tons of events here as well. The convention center downtown is host to a number of events, like the Combine that I mentioned. We have Gen Con. We have every kind of professional and fun convention that you can imagine. We have Indy Comic Con here too, just all sorts of any interest you may have. We've got it happening at the fairgrounds, in one of our sporting arenas, or in the convention center. So it's an awesome place to be entertained, especially if you like sports. So the second pro is Indianapolis is a great city for travel. So they don't call Indiana the crossroads of America for nothing. It used to be a major train hub back in the day to connect the east to the growing west in the country. And Indianapolis has never stopped being that crossroads of America. We have, in my opinion, the best airport in the country. If you've ever flown out of Indianapolis, you know what I mean. The security's fast, boarding your flight is super easy, and it is so convenient. Everything from the parking to flying out of here. Our airport is amazing, and it's also an international airport. You can go really anywhere you want to in the country very easily, and then beyond as well, with several international flights, or it's easy to catch a connection from Indianapolis as well. And then driving, you can get to every major city in the Midwest and beyond very easily from Indianapolis because our interstate network is so great. We've got 465 surrounding the city. We do have another road called 865 around the city as well. And then we have 69, 65, 70, and 74 going out in every direction to get you anywhere where you could want to go. Whether you want to go to St. Louis or Chicago or Detroit or Columbus or Cleveland or Dayton or Louisville or Nashville, Tennessee. A lot of people here like to vacation down in Gatlinburg because it's so quick to get to. You can really get anywhere you want to from Indianapolis, even with a day trip or make a weekend out of it. It's very, very simple, flying or driving. The third pro for living in Indy is the amount of green space and nature that is not only within the city, but just right outside of it. So a lot of cities out there are really gray, drab. They've really killed all of the nature that the city was founded on in the first place. But that's not true with Indianapolis. We've got tons of parks, farms, forests, anything you can imagine, either in the city or around the city. We've got places like Traders Point Creamery, Tuttle Orchards, If you want like a farm experience or a farm to table experience, people in the fall will go, pumpkin patching or apple picking, and you don't even have to leave the city for that. There's tons of places to do that and enjoy sort of nature's bounty. But not only that, we have great parks. We've got places like Southeast Way Park, for instance, within the city limits, where you can go on walking trails. There's playgrounds. A lot of our parks have pools, splash pads, water parks, you name it. It's a really great place to get out in nature without having to drive a long time to get there. We even have a state park within city limits. So Fort Harrison State Park is like stepping into a whole nother world. You can go there, really, enjoy nature, true hiking trails. There's water there. You can picnic there. Anything that you would want to do in a state park, you can do that very, very easily just going to Fort Bend. Not only that, you can go beyond the city. You can go to places like McCormick's Creek, Turkey Run, Brookville Lake, Patoka Lake, Brown County. All these places are within like an hour or so of the city, depending on where you're leaving from in the city, to make an easy day trip where you can have a full-on enjoyment in nature. Or they're great places to spend a weekend, rent a cabin, in some places get a boat. It's a wonderful place to live if you love nature. And the fourth pro for living in Indianapolis is how affordable it is. Compared to all of the other major cities in the US, Indianapolis is one of the lower ranked on how expensive it is to live here. Now, while housing prices have increased over time here, to show the value of the housing here, it's still so affordable. If you compare it to places on either coast, Indianapolis is going to be much, much affordable. And that's why I was saying with travel, live in Indianapolis and then travel elsewhere. It's great because you get the best of both worlds. It's so affordable living here, so you can afford to go on vacation, while you get to enjoy all the green spaces I mentioned before and the seasons we have here. It's an awesome place to live. But because of that affordability, you can also explore other areas as well. So our housing prices are lower than most other major cities, and there's plenty of places to live no matter what your vibe is in Indianapolis and in the surrounding areas. But beyond that, just the cost of living, things like groceries, things like energy costs, how much it costs to heat and cool your home compared to other places in the country, it's a night and day difference. Compared to Arizona, Texas, California, Washington, New York, New Jersey, wherever you're coming from. It's so much more affordable here. And that really, especially if you're a remote worker and you're earning the wages of a more expensive state, it really opens up your opportunities for what you can do financially and in your lifestyle. All right, so con number one, the reason Indianapolis isn't as great, winter. Winter is brutal sometimes in Indianapolis. So we don't get as much snow as somewhere like Minneapolis or Detroit or Chicago, but we get a lot more snow than places in the South. So it gets cold here. We have all 4 seasons in Indiana, and spring, summer, fall, all amazing. Winter, it gets cold, and in January, it gets frigid. So a lot of the times we have more mild winters, but we're usually good for at least one really big snowfall per year. The good news is that the city is really good about getting it cleared off the streets so that your business, your daily life is not impacted too much. We've got the plows out, we've got salt out on the streets, so it's pretty good to go shortly after snowfall. But it usually takes a long time for the snow to melt because it stays cold in the winter. So as long as you're bundled up, it can be a good time. And there's plenty of ways to make the best of it. There's tubing places where you can sled down a hill really fast. There's places to actually enjoy the winter. And I know my kids love it. They like it more than me. The second con or negative reason why you might not like Indianapolis as much is if you're really big on elevation. Indianapolis and much of Indiana in general is flat as a pancake. And if you look at the movement of like glaciers in the past, it explains why this happened. They think that a glacier came down sort of over northern Indiana and sort of stopped around the midpoint. And that's why northern Indiana and central Indiana is so flat, but you have all these hills in southern Indiana leading into Kentucky, where it's obviously very hilly. And we really don't have mountains or elevation or tons of climbing in Indianapolis. So if that's something that's really of interest to you, maybe you're moving from Denver or somewhere in the Appalachian, it's very different in Indianapolis. It is very flat, which can be convenient in some ways. It's easy to move around. It's easy to build here. And there are places that can be hillier. We have places along, Fall Creek, for instance, that do have some gentle rolling hills, but a lot of that is in southern Indiana. Indianapolis, for the most part, is very flat. So if you're into elevation hiking, this might not be the best place to do that. Con number 3, and honestly, this is the biggest one, is construction. Because we have all 4 seasons in Indiana, a lot of the interstates around Indianapolis need to be updated and worked on a regular basis. So this is true if you live in the Midwest, you know what I'm talking about, but it's definitely true in Indianapolis, where in the winter you'll get snow, you'll get ice, that freezes on the asphalt, and then it thaws when it warms up, and then a lot of times it refreezes. This is gonna crack the asphalt, and it means that over time, with all the cars driving on the asphalt, it needs repaved. And because Indianapolis is a growing city, we're also expanding interstates, creating new traffic solutions as well. So that leads to a lot of road work from time to time. And the number one culprit, in my opinion, on this is 465, which is the road that surrounds Indianapolis. It does make for really convenient travel most of the time, but when 465 or one of our other major interstates is getting worked on, things can get choked up. And this tends to happen, of course, in the warmer months because it's a lot harder for them to work on it when it's 0 degrees outside and there's ice on the ground. So sometimes there can be construction, and a lot of times they'll do multiple projects at once to get them done during those warmer months. So that's my least favorite part of living in Indianapolis, but usually it's not too much of a bother. And con number 4, while Indianapolis is an easy place to get around, that's true if you have a car. If you're someone who would prefer to use public transit, Indianapolis is not the best city for that compared to other cities in the United States. We do have public transit. There's plenty of buses throughout the city, downtown in Indianapolis. But in terms of that going to the wider areas of Indianapolis, it's not as developed as other areas. We don't have a lot of trains like Chicago. There's no subways here. But we do have bikes. There are scooters throughout the downtown that people can hop on and off pretty easily. But in terms of moving around the downtown, if you're relying on public transit, it's a little more difficult. It's a lot easier to drive. The good news is that if you live within the city, in the true downtown of Indianapolis, everything is very walkable. Everything from Gainbridge, where the Pacers play, to Lucas Oil, where the Colts play, that whole area, White River State Park, the Circle, all the buildings and businesses downtown, the apartments. The entire downtown of Indianapolis is extremely walkable, and that can help make up for some of the lack of public transit. But if you're someone who is typically using public transit, just be sure to plan accordingly within Indianapolis or consider investing in a car. So I hope this was helpful in looking at the pros and the cons of living in Indianapolis. As I mentioned earlier, the pros vastly outweigh the cons here. It's a wonderful place to live. I think we have 3 great seasons. Some people like winter, not me, just a personal choice. But on the whole, it really is a wonderful place. Your money's going to go further here. The weather on the whole is great here. There's tons of nature here, just not elevation. And it's a great place to travel to and from. Very easy to get out and about here. So if you found this helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more notifications. And if you're interested in potentially moving to Indianapolis or learning more, let's set up time to talk. You can look at our links below and set up a Zoom call or a regular call or a text or whatever's easiest for you. We're here to help, and I can't wait to see you in the next video where we're going to cover more about what makes Indianapolis an amazing place to live.